Discover the advantage of unlimited access to all the stories and resources from IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. From insights to inspiration, business leaders rely on the IBJ for all things Indiana business. Start your $1 a week trial now at ibj.com/trial offer.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Monday, February 16th, 2026. I'm Abriana Herron. Farmer sentiment saw a big drop in January due to a rise in financial pressures and concerns over exports, according to the latest Purdue University CME Group Ag Economy Barometer. The barometer fell 23 points to a reading of 113 last month. Michael Langemeyer, director of the Center for Commercial Agriculture at Purdue, says increasing financial pressures can largely be attributed to rising operating loans, which are often due to carry over unpaid debt.
If you're increasing the size of your operating loan primarily due to unpaid debt, that's probably a signal that we're seeing more financial stress here in early 26.
The barometer is calculated monthly from a telephone survey of 400 agricultural producers across the country. Last month's survey was conducted between January 12th through the 16th. The International Center has named Indianapolis Colts owner and CEO Carlie Irsay-Gordon as the 2026 International Citizen of the Year. The annual award is given to individuals whose leadership advances global engagement, strengthens international collaboration, and fosters cross-cultural understanding. The University of Evansville is set to host the inaugural Evansville Civics Bee in April in partnership with the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. The live event will be part of the 2026 National Civics Bee and marks the first event of its kind in Southern Indiana. Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand is made possible by the following.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media podcast network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
Indiana lawmakers are working on a statewide policy for rounding cash transactions as retailers face a shortage of pennies. Inside Indiana Business's Alex Brown has more.
The U.S. Mint stopped producing the coin for circulation in November, and businesses say supplies have been disappearing faster than expected. Stores across the state are now rounding purchases in different ways, some rounding totals, others rounding change. Melissa Coxey with the Indiana Retail Council says the lack of guidance has forced businesses to improvise. A proposal in Senate Bill 243, written by Republican Senator Travis Holdman, would standardize the process. The bill requires sales taxes on cash retail purchases to be calculated on the exact amount, then rounded down to the nearest nickel. Other cash payments to businesses would round to the nearest nickel or dime depending on the final cents. But business groups, including the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, say rounding should happen only after the final total is calculated to avoid confusion, especially when customers split payments between cash and card. Guidance from the National Conference of State Legislatures also recommends rounding at the end of the transaction to ensure accuracy and fairness. The penny is still an acceptable form of payment. More amendments to the bill are likely before a final policy is adopted. Alex Brown, Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Evansville-based Old National Bancorp has appointed Joe Chasteen to the newly created role of Chief Revenue Enablement Officer, the bank announced this month. The parent of Old National Bank said the new strategic leadership position is focused on establishing and reinforcing the company's enterprise-wide disciplined sales processes. Leaders at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway are shifting into gear with new events and plans to build on fan momentum. On Friday, IMS unveiled the United We Race campaign video. This year's race logo is red, white, and blue to celebrate the nation's 250th birthday. IMS and IndyCar president Doug Bowles says in an interview with Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick that this year's race celebrates diversity.
really is about how the diversity of our series, the diversity of our drivers, the diversity of our fan base, all 50 states represented here, almost 50 countries represented here. It is a massive international race, and it is that one point in time where I know everybody gets together and united, we put on 500 miles that everybody can't wait to see every year.
The Indianapolis 500 is scheduled for May 24th. I'm Aubriana Herron for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Whether it's healthcare innovation, major infrastructure, or global sports impact, Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick tells the stories of Indiana's groundbreakers and game changers. It's the must-listen show for business, civic, and community leaders across the state. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcast.com.
The IBJ Media Podcast Network is the soundtrack of a growing state. Indiana is on the move, and you can hear it happening on the IBJ Media Podcast Network. We bring you the voices at the center of our economy, our courts, our companies, and our communities. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation that's building Indiana's future. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcasts.com.